color so that your eye does not recede very far into that space. And there's some tremendous simplifications. The daffodils are not delineated in any particular degree. There are no lines in them. If you look closely, you can see some measure of change of color, but it looks like one big puffy flattened cotton ball on top of sort of a green, somewhat volume that was a vase. So again, not as flattened as the first one I showed you, but definitely not as sculptural and three-dimensional and weighty as the Munter at the end. So, and color-wise, how would you describe this color? The yellow, the green, the grays? What words would you use to describe it? Yes, muted, yeah, very softened and muted, restrained, you might say, color harmonies. Almost fuzzy, almost like if you didn't have good glasses, you would see the world this way, with a very soft, fuzzy edge. Bonnard's pictures, if you know them, always reminded me of taking his subjects, his objects, and flattening them with an iron, pressing them down with an iron, because they all have that flattened, softened, hazy, quite color look to them. Munter, on the other hand, Gabriele Munter, much more intense, bold, dramatic color contrast, that bright yellow against that very deep, saturated ultramarine blue. The green closing off the spatial recession there so that everything is projected forward, the tilting up of this tabletop. All of these apples and narcissus is its title, lined with this heavy black outline, very Cézannesque, which is from the traditions. And in fact, the paint application in this little hatchwork is very Cézannesque. So there's the traditions coming into play. Obviously, Munter was inspired, you might say, by Cézanne, used some of the Cézanne ideas to make her picture do what she wanted it to do. And what she wanted it to do was make this series of weighty, rounded, heavy color volumes essentially revolve around this is a transferred value, pole-like what was a vase, setting off, notice how she splits these flowers so that this side projects down, this side projects back, creating a canopy of space around which those volumes can rotate. So again, from your life experience, you could say it's carousel-like. It's like a merry-go-round, that these objects were set in such a way that they actually surround this unit, and this becomes the canopy of space that creates that illusion of space in that picture. But now we have these visual artists then, all starting from relatively the same subject, that are presenting to us very different experiences, visual experiences of that subject. So where one sees softness and haziness, another one sees drama and setness and power. Where one might see delicacy and lightness and airiness, somebody else sees something else quite different. And that's what essentially artists do. Now you have copies of these poems, because I wasn't sure from way back where you are you'd be able to see them, even though I enlarged them considerably. Similarly, to continue our theme, we have two poets essentially experiencing daffodils. But notice how differently their perceptions are. So you have one, Robert Herrick, fair daffodils, we weep to see you haste away so soon, as yet the early rising sun has not attained his noon. Stay, stay, until the hasting day has run but to the even song, and having prayed together, we will go with you along. We have short time to stay as you, we have as short a spring, as quick a growth to meet decay as you or anything. We die as your hours do, and dry away like to the summer's rain, or as the pearls of morning dew, ne'er to be found again. That's one reaction. Wordsworth, on the other hand, goes out and sees these daffodils. You should all have it now. I don't know if I have to read the whole thing, and you could quickly read through it if you can't see it, and has a very different reaction. A very different reaction. So where Robert Herrick sees a short life, a brief life, the daffodils bloom, they die, it's quick, it's over, or as one of my high school students says, we're born, we die, that's it, get over it. It's wonderful to teach students, young students, because they get to the gist of something very quickly. Not Wordsworth. He goes out and sees these daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. And then he tells you they're continuous, they twinkle, they stretch in a never-ending line. 10,000 I saw at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. And the waves beside him are dancing, and they outdid the waves, sparkling in glee. He can't but be gay in such company. And then the end, the point of it, when he's on his couch in a vacant or pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude, and his heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. And his perception then is, you see something wonderful like that, it's exciting and joyful, and years and years, years later, when you're perhaps not in a particularly good mood, you remember that, and not that you just remember it, but the memory comes with the feeling attached. So you feel it again. I mean, I guess negative side of this is what they called a traumatic stress disorder, where traumas do the same thing. If you have a horrible, horrible thing happen to you, or something horrible that you witness, and you remember that again, that also comes, unfortunately, with the feelings attached to it, and people have to work very hard to get past it. So he's talking about something far different than Herrick, but they're both using the same subject. So my point about subject, which is where we started with this, is it is plastic as well. It is malleable and changeable for as many people as there are in the world, or as many artists as there are in the world, who come to that subject to find something of interest to say about it. And the sky's the limit. The subject can be used over and over and over again. Think of crucifixions, annunciations, by artists throughout the centuries, and there's no two alike. No two alike, because each artist comes to it with a unique way of seeing it. And we're talking literally about ways of seeing more than we're talking about anything else. Okay, and then tradition as well is what artists adapt to their purposes. And now we are going to get to the meat of this so that you could go to work. And that is the aesthetic. Again, from the Greek, which I won't even try to pronounce. It means to perceive or to attain awareness or understanding. So let's talk a little bit about some aesthetic qualities. And we seem to be hardwired to enjoy these. I think first on the list are the first two are balance and symmetry. We're used to these from nature. I mean, there's really no reason that butterfly wings have to be like this, have to be so beautifully symmetrical, but they are. And this is just one example of a butterfly wing. Or flowers have to be so wonderfully symmetrical, but many of them are. The daffodils themselves, if you look at them, have the same sort of symmetry that we're talking about, that central unit balanced all around by these wonderful projecting petals. So that if you think of just life itself and as we experience it, most of these aesthetic qualities that we simply enjoy for their own sake, not for any practical use or significance, are all around us for us to do that with. And many of you know that you have or take aesthetic pleasure in very simple things. In the fall, walking on crunchy leaves, just the sound of that. Or in the winter, when snow is packed and it squeaks under your feet. I used to love that. Just the feel and the sound of it always made me very happy. When your checkbook balances effortlessly, that comes with an aesthetic satisfaction. We feel good about that. So anything we enjoy for its own sake, not for any practical use, is part of the aesthetic. And if you think of it as, and I do this with children because it's easy for them, the aesthetic is what wakes our senses up, educates them, informs our aesthetic sense. Think of it as the opposite of anesthetic. And you know what that feels like. You're given an anesthetic to knock your senses out so you don't feel anything. So the aesthetic is what artists work with. They're specialists in it, essentially. They deal with the aesthetic all the time. Not just visual artists. I'll show you some of these if you want. I'll leave them here and you can look at them. But certainly dance choreographers who invent dance phrases. If you look at the symmetry and the balance of these that I'm showing you, when you go to a dance performance, that's what you're enjoying. And, you know, there's a zillion of them. So symmetry and balance is what we're talking about. Not just dance, and not just ballet, I should say. Modern dance as well, I believe. That's not who I thought it was, but modern dance companies do the same thing. Dancing with the Stars does the same thing. You get these examples everywhere you look. Some of them are stunningly exciting, but they're balanced. Balanced. We respond to that. That's of an aesthetic nature. I keep collecting these. The New York Times is particularly good at this, so I just keep cutting them up. But it's not just dance. It's not just either the arts as well. There is that kind of excitement and balance in many good photographs, photojournalism that you see in newspapers. This is one for the photograph of the slain priest in Baghdad. That was just a week or so ago. Again, look at it as a picture, not a conveyor of information now. And you've got the central unit balanced on both sides by almost equal numbers of small color units. So now we're looking at these as pictures. Sports, this is just a pitcher releasing a ball. I don't know if it was a strike or a ball. I don't know if he won the game or lost the game, but that's a good picture. That's a good picture. And so is this one. So no matter where these come from, the visual elements that we're talking about, what that give us aesthetic pleasure, are alive and well. Now with an artist, a visual artist, there's something else that comes into play. And I'm going to start moving rapidly so I can get through all this. And this is one that we'll work with in the next few minutes. We're calling it rhythm, which is what Barnes and DeMazier call it. And all we mean by rhythm is some kind of repetition with variety. So for example, if you had to listen to this, how long would you last? This is a perfectly useful tool. It's a metronome, and it gives you a steady beat. And you can make it go slower, or you can make it go faster, depending on the music you're trying to play. But you sure don't want to spend a lot of time listening to it, because it's not very interesting, is it? On the other hand, if you listen to this, okay. That's Mongo Santamaria. He's a jazz drummer who incorporates Afro-Cuban rhythms. But listen to the variety. And I think for a while you would give him a little more notice, because there's so many interlayers of rhythms that are superimposed one on top of another. It's so intricate in its rhythmic variety that you would have an easier time paying attention to that than my metronome. And this is what music is about. I took a course when I was in high school. I was a senior and had some electives free in music composition, of all things. And I remember the instructor the first day said, he put the staff up there, you know, the G clef, and he said, all you have to do is invent a motif, 3 notes, whatever 3 you want, whatever kind of short or length that you're going to hold them down, and then play with them. And I remember sitting there thinking, that's it? He said, that's it. That's it. That's what music is about. It's a motif and variation. It's a motif and variation. That was an eye-opener to me. Of course, what he didn't tell us, it was the quality of the motif that made a huge difference. But that came later. We figured that out later. All right, now listen to Mozart, because it's not all that much different. I hope you're going to listen to Mozart. There it is. All right, that's it. You got the motif? There it is again. That's all there is. And he keeps varying it and varying it and varying it. Terrifically symmetrical in the sense of Mozart, more so than some of the other pieces. Now this next one, yes, come ahead, is Dvorak from the New World Symphony that the New York Philharmonic played in North Korea. Okay, I'll do the same thing with it. I'm just going to do a snippet so you can hear the repetition and variety. It'll take a second or two. And there it is again. A little slower. And it goes on. Again, balance and symmetry, repetition with variety. Okay, next. And this one you know, but it's that's quite a motif. And there it is again. Got the idea. Okay, so my point is these repetitions with variety are what create the aesthetic enjoyment that we perceive. And as you listen to music, you just keep paying attention to how many times that composer is able to vary that little motif that he or she begins with. And it's impressive when they do it very, very well, which they can do. Okay, so let's talk about that. If nothing else, how an artist repeats, what an artist repeats. In the case of visual artists, they have lots of opportunity for these repetitions. They can repeat colors, they can repeat shapes, they can repeat quality of lines, they can repeat kinds of spatial relationships. And all of that, it's not arbitrary, all of that eventually makes its way into one unified whole. What it is they're trying to say, what it is they're trying to show us. So, let's see if I can put away some stuff. And then we can practice. Now, this painting I've brought in to show you is a painting, let's see. The artist name is Edward L. Loper, Jr. He is the son of Edward L. Loper Sr. They're both Wilmington, Delaware artists. They're both still working and painting in Wilmington, Delaware. The dad, Sr., Loper Sr., is now 92, and Edward Loper Jr. is about 75. I actually lost track, but I think that's right. All right, his subject was a churchyard in Manayunk. Some of you may even know this little park, I don't know. So he probably went out one day, because I know how he works, and he looked around and came to this place, and he felt interested in it. He felt excited about it. Again, he's a visual artist. His job, therefore, is to convey now to us his interest. What was he interested in? He has to do it in terms of his medium of expression, which, in case you forgot, was color on a flat surface. That's what he works with. This is oil paint. And so he goes out to do it. So my question to you is, given a very, very brief introduction to this process, let's look at this together and see what you can now see in it that perhaps 20 minutes ago you would not have been able to see. Particularly, look for those repetitions of color, light, line, and space that you see here that begin to add up